Hi there, we're in the Department of Twin Research at King's College London, and today I'm here with Dr. Claire Steeves, who's Clinical Deputy Director for TwinsUK and Consultant Geriatrician, and Stephen Oram, Science Fiction Writer. So we're here because Stephen has just published a book of short stories based on interviews you had with researchers, one of whom was Claire Steeves. So Stephen, could you tell me a little bit about your book?
Yeah, sure. So it's called Biohacked Begging. Mainly because there's stories in there that are looking at sort of future technology and all that side of things, but also with a sort of social spin, so that's why I've got those two. It's 25 short pieces, as you say, some of those from projects I've worked with different scientists, including Claire. Some of them have been written around particular themes for live reading events, some of them just come out of my head, just for no reason at all, other than I like them. And I just pulled all those together into a collection.
And what inspired you to come up with this collection?
I think so. Firstly, they should be entertaining. So that's the main thing. They are there to entertain. Otherwise, you would write differently. So that's the main thing. But also, I quite like to maybe generate some conversation around particular sort of current, potential future topics about how society might be, what technology might be like, and trying to do that in a way through fiction that sort of sparks the interest of people who might not be used to thinking about that sort of thing, or it's not their sort of the main thing they do during the day.
Right, so like a little flavour of science, or something, a flavour of kind of thinking about these future scenarios.
Yeah. And that's why it's been really important for me to also have in the back, which Claire contributed to, is some responses from scientists and experts as well, just to sort of balance that. So it's not just a set of stories that are various degrees of probability. It's also to get that balance.
Right. And how did you come across Claire? How did you two meet? How did Claire come involved in your project?
So I've been involved with a project with King's College London for a couple of years actually, all around the sort of science fiction, science, can science fiction influence science? What does working, so writers, scientists working together, the writer obviously writing the story, but the scientist then checking that science and talking about their work. That project is run by somebody called Christine Baccardet, who is a social scientist, and she's interested in the effect it has on audiences, the effect it has on scientists, and the effect it has on the writers, and it was through that project that I introduced to Claire and TwinsUK and the rest of it.
Great. Well, before we ask you about the actual story you wrote, Claire, tell us a little bit about your research.
Well, so as a geriatrician, clinically, I work with older people who come into hospital with some difficulty, and you see that there's a huge variety of older people. Some very, very fit, robust people, but often some people who are very frail, and it doesn't seem to be dependent particularly on your age. But so I was really interested to understand what causes that. What causes that difference between people? Because if we can try and understand that, we might be able to find ways of making sure people age better, improving lifespan. So that's kind of the goal. And so engaging in a range of different projects which are really around trying to understand how we can identify risk of future aging and how we might then personalise our medicine to change future aging.
Right, no, it's definitely something that we hear a lot about in the news, of personalised medicine and understand obviously ageing population being an issue of concern for the UK.
Yeah.
So very topical for sure. And so tell us a little bit about the story itself. So Zygosity Saves the Day is the title in the new book. Maybe you can show us the new book.
Yeah, so here's the new book.
Very nice.
So Zygosity Saves the Day. So this came out of, I spent a morning in the Twins project with two sisters, who were twins, who'd come in for their first visit and were going through various tests about their cognition and blood tests and so on. And the story sort of came out of that and conversations with Claire around sort of health span, how you can age well and all the rest of it. So, and other things I was thinking about. So It touches on different healthcare systems that might be available if you have money or if you don't have money. I'm quite interested in the idea that maybe in the future the human contact will be the thing that is expensive and all the machines and automation will be the things that are cheap. So if you have money, you have human contact in your care. If you don't, it's all automated. So it touches on a bit of that and the difference between having private healthcare and state healthcare. At the same time, I was looking into things like facial recognition, which apparently doesn't change with age. So you could have identical twins who'd age differently, but they would look the same in facial recognition. And obviously the DNA bit. So there's bits in there about how we are identified as we go about our daily lives in the future, and it's much more just sort of that type of thing rather than showing your passport or whatever. But then I think for me the thing that really stood out on the morning I spent here was the bond between the two sisters. Not particularly because they were twins, I don't think, but just how they were sort of checking each other and they really cared for each other. So the thread of the story is very much around that sort of sisterly love.
And without giving too much away, of course, in the short story, we see these sisters and we see this kind of scary state-run, computer-run healthcare system. And Claire, how did you feel? How did you kind of respond to that when you read that, thinking, no, goodness, this isn't what my researchers thought? Tell us a little about that.
Yeah. So the first sort of visceral reaction reading the story, I mean, it was kind of a bit panic and terror, really. You know, it's quite a shocking story. But then, I mean, it didn't take me long to sort of reflect on the fact that, of course, that's what we sort of talked about right from the start. I mean, my anxiety is that, you know, as we're starting to think about technologies to try to predict futures, that we make sure that that's equally available and fairly available. And also a concern around sort of what happens. I think you bring this out really well. What happens if actually it's not the right time for you to help to make those choices, or you can't, you know, there's some reason why those choices are not so available to some people than others, and how do we kind of work with that in a fair way? So I think, you know, the story is shocking and so on, but it's also I can see where it comes from. But I love the fact, and I sort of said this in my commentary, that he did really pull out that love between the sisters, and in a way it's that kind of human love, compassion that will save us from any kind of dystopia, I hope.
So Claire, obviously you're going to be featured in the science fiction book, you know, your research in the story, but also your comment piece. How does that feel compared to publishing a research paper, which is perhaps something you're more familiar with?
Oh, that's very interesting. Yeah, well, yeah, it's a different style of writing. It's different. I guess I'm thinking about in that commentary piece. I'm talking about bigger problems maybe than I would normally write about, and also they're problems that are not sort of scientifically testable, or there isn't the same structure about how you talk in that kind of way. So that's interesting. I think I'm making an opinion statement, which could be argued with, but hopefully in the same vein as what you're doing, it's trying to spark more conversation, really, about trying to move the conversation forward. But yeah, it's a very different sort of writing, and I'll be interested if I get any comments around it.
And Stephen, obviously as a science fiction writer, you read a lot of science and you write a lot about lots of different topics. So was there anything particularly surprising about writing in this area, or anything that really interested you? Tell me a little bit about, you know, what it was like to write about this specific research area.
So I think the thing that really struck me the time I spent with you and the twins and everything was that broad range of the very, very personal of two people coming in, going through the same tests together and saying, so how did you do on that one, and how did you do on that one, and that very, very, very human touch. And then sitting down with the big data person who there's massive amounts of data they're trying to make some sort of sense out of, and does this correlate with this or not, and is this a cause of this, and all that. And I think that was great for me to get all of that, because I think, well, for stories you need the human you need the human bit. That's what we're interested in. So that was great, and I'm really pleased that you wrote something in the back, because I think you're right about generating conversation. I mean that's why I want those responses in the back, even if they disagree with the. Well, hopefully they would disagree with the rather bleak picture. I mean, I paint a bleak picture partly to provoke. But I'm really up for that counter argument. And actually, there's a biohacker who's responded to one story, whose basic response is, "Don't be so doom and gloom. The world's going to be better than this," which is great. It's fine. It's a conversation.
And a question for you both. So, you say you're being provocative, and somebody's complained that's a bit scary, a bit doom and gloom. So people who do read these stories and think, oh goodness, what would happen if the world did end up like this? What can they do? How can they get involved in either policy or research perhaps, or anything like that? How can we kind of stop these worlds from happening?
So from my perspective, I use the tagline for this and the previous collection, which is "The future is ours and it's up for grabs," which I really do believe. So I think partly understanding and engaging with it, and not just sort of passively accepting what's going on a very broad sense. Having those conversations, finding out as much as you can, depending what your background is, how much you can understand because of what you already know and all the rest of it. But I guess just engaging with the stuff and I don't know, reading this sort of stuff and going, okay, so how do I, if I don't like that, how do I stop that?
Claire? Well, I suppose that's sort of where I was when I was thinking about writing the commentary. Sort of, because in a way, I'm not somebody who likes to think of worst case scenarios unless I can think of potential solutions or potential mitigations. And so I guess that's where I'm coming from in the commentary, sort of say, well, actually we can understand this and work out how to protect it, but we have to work together, and we have to work across scientists and the public, and also the healthcare delivery, the whole machinery of how we run healthcare. So all of that needs to be engaged within the conversation, as well as people, citizens themselves, if we're going to make our future.
Indeed, yeah.
And so taking part in this project, so spending the day with Stephen, showing him about your research, reading his piece, writing your own comment piece, has that made you kind of think about your research differently? Has it changed how you approach any area of your research or your work?
Yeah, I think it's a good reminder, it's a good sort of wake-up call that, the whole issue about open science, there's sort of like the slight tension there between scientists wanting to, safeguard their ideas and yet make them open, and likewise data, making sure that data is shared, but shared with confidentiality, all these things. So I think there are tensions. It's really useful to have them highlighted. It's really refreshing to have somebody new come in. I think it's just great generally to have people from completely different walks of life just come in and observe and make comment. So I think that's been a very rewarding experience, really.
And for you, Stephen, kind of what next after this book?
All sorts of things. So before that, I'd like to say that it's great that you allowed me in, because I get that it can be a little bit sort of, how's this going to go? Some sci-fi writer's going to come in and start writing about what we're doing, so thank you for that. What's next? Various things, more books will come out. I'm actually just starting on a project with Finsbury Park, which is 150 years old. So we're looking at, with local residents and scientists, looking at the future of a park. And then we have an event on the 3rd of June called Share the Future, which is, again, looking at the openness of science and sharing things with sci-fi, science, and more broadly.
And I think that's an event that we're going to open to the general public, isn't it? So everybody, this is a part of a way that we can continue the conversation.
Yeah, and having a good amount of space of that for sort of question and answer, and people taking that conversation further.
Great. And then last question, where can we get a book?
All over the place, wherever you would normally get books. So if it's not stocked, you can get your bookshop to order it, maybe stocked in some online.
Great. And for those of you who want to find out more about the research we do in the Department of Twin Research, you can look online at twinsuk.ac.uk for more information about Claire's work and the rest of the work that we do in the department. Thank you very much, Stephen, Claire, for your time and for this interesting interview. Best of luck for the rest of the future.
Thank you.
Thank you.